Good evening, everyone out there in YouTube land. My name is Jared, and this is my channel, Mazda B3K. In this video, we are going to replace a defective fuel tank selector valve in my 1989 Ford F350 7.3 IDI diesel. Without further ado, let's get started.
Okay.
Alright, so, fuel tank selector valve. What is it? It's this thing. This one is of Dorman vintage, and it is mounted in the driver's fuel rail, and as the name implies, it takes power, and when you hit a switch up near your instrument cluster, it will select between your front tank or your rear tank. It also passes through the voltage signal for the senders from your fuel tanks, so they'll display on your gauge up on the cluster. Now the one on this one is broken. It is stuck on the front tank, so I'll let you take a listen to what it does when you try to switch it to the rear. Okay, so it's quiet right now, but watch this. Hear that? Get down here. Your source of your sound is right here in the fuel rail, which is the, I'd get under, but I'm wearing a nice shirt. But basically it's stuck. It's trying to flip the valve and it can't. So we're stuck on the front tank, but the rear tank is slap full of diesel and we want to get to that one. So you can see, here's our rear tank. Here's our thing. And it may have gone down a little bit, but it is, yeah, it went down a little bit, but it is slap full of diesel. So we want to access this tank, which means we gotta replace the defective part. All right, here's the actual unit in the wild. It is right up there next to the front fuel tank, and you're gonna need a small flathead to help you get this connector off. And it's really important you pay attention to what kind of connector you have, because there were two variants of this that got used, an older and a newer, and depending on what you have, it's going to mix you up at the parts store. So the way this works is pretty simple. The lines that come in at the bottom are for the rear tank. The lines that come in up top right here are for the front tank. And then there's some lines that go forward, and those are the ones that actually are pulling fuel via the mechanical fuel pump that's up on the block of the engine. So my suggestion to you is, once you get this out of the way, there are these retainers that feed through this connector. They look like this. Guitar pick with legs, as I call it. And they're pretty easy to remove. You just kind of squeeze them and kind of pull them out. It's the old style quick disconnect fuel retainer clip thingamabobbers that Ford uses. Each one of them, those fuel connections over here, should have one. I am missing one on the, I don't think it's the rear. I think it's on the front tank here. But I mean, I'm gonna replace it, but for the here and the now, for idling the engine, when the lift pump up front's pulling, it's going to be creating kind of a vacuum up here. So it shouldn't be like when you have a pump in the tank and it's a pushing pressure where it would pop off. So I've already removed this one. You just kind of wiggle it and it should pop off if you get the retainer out. And something's not broken in here. Anyway, so this is a two-part connector here. This is where you take your flat blade and you get it under here, pull it up, pull it out. I'll do that, and then I'll explain to you what I was talking about earlier with connector types. All right, check it out. Got it out. So you see how this has a keyway on the side? And you see how, if you look, well, I'll show you on the replacement here. If you look in the actual connector head, get out with this little light. That's terrible. There, better. See how those are flat pins? This is the newer style. The keyway retainer is on the side and the pins are flat. There is an older style that is also used on the IDI diesels where the pins are not flat, they are round, and the keyway retainer is in the middle here and not on the side. So before you order the selector valve, you need to get under your truck and check. See which one you currently have. If you want to go to the new one, you can. They do offer pigtails where you can replace the pigtail and upgrade to the newer one. It's cheaper and easier to find. But just keep that in mind. Like the part house thing said that I should use the other type that I just mentioned with the round pins. Obviously, I don't have that. So if I bought it, it would have been the wrong selector valve. So just bear that in mind. I'm going to work on getting these loose. There are two bolts that hold this into the frame rail. I'm not going to pull those until I get all these fuel lines off. So I want to have something I can pull against. And also make sure you don't mix up your fuel lines. That would be bad. By the way, guys, these are 10 millimeter bolts if these are from the factory. So the 10 millimeters strikes again. All right, guys, got the old one out. Yay. Save most of the clips. Yay. So you may want to buy a pack of these and have them on hand before you do this. So all of your returns are in orange and all of your sources have yellow caps. So keep that in mind. They are different sizes. The source is larger diameter than the return. So that means the actual lines coming from the tanks are also going to be different sizes. So line them up, feed a retainer through them, and then screw this guy back in and you are done. All right, since I don't have enough retainers, I went ahead and I locked in all the source side, which is the side up against the frame rail that you can't get to. And I've got, I think I need 3. Yeah, I need 3. So those will all be on the returns and should be good to go. I'm going to go ahead and reconnect power and see if this thing indeed will switch between tanks. And then also see if by some miracle this fixed my fuel cinders, which I doubt it, but who knows. Let's see. Okay, so just to show you, right now I have it on rear tank. So now we're on front tank. It says I have infinite amount of fuel, so the cinders are still busted. But we are getting separate cinder readings, and I'm not hearing the tank valve complain, so I'm gonna assume that yeah, we're now on the rear tank, so we can start trying to run off it. Now that whole process, as you'll see when you do this, you're going to be leaking diesel. So there's going to be air in the lines and you're going to have to purge it. And with a diesel, that's lots of cranking. And if you do not know it, if you're new to diesels, if you're new to this particular diesel, you have an air purge Schrader right up here on top of the fuel air water separator. So crank on it a bit. Punch this, get some air out, crank, punch, and eventually, if everything else is in decent shape, it should fire off. So there you go. Got the air out of the lines, fired right up, and we're running off the rear tank. So I'm going to call this a successful repair. Alrighty, folks, that's going to do it for this episode where we changed out the fuel tank selector valve in my 1989 Ford F350 7.3 liter IDI diesel. If you found this video interesting, if you found it entertaining, if you found it educational, please consider sharing, and subscribing. That does help to grow the channel, which allows me to bring you more content like this. Please also leave a comment. I like to read them, I like to reply to them, and I like to learn from them. And lastly, guys, I make the mistakes so you don't have to. I'll catch you guys next episode.